Welcome to the Chuck Whitlock Show, What's the Matter?, where we invite experts from every walk of life to discuss everyday issues affecting our community, your family, and you. Because if it matters to you, it matters to us. You may have seen him on The Oprah Winfrey Show, The View, Extra, or hundreds of other shows. Here's your host, Chuck Whitlock.
Hello, I'm Chuck Whitlock, your host, and welcome to What's the Matter? There was a time when a con artist could rip off a victim here and a victim there. Today, that same con artist can scam thousands of people on the internet, through the mail, or by using robocall centers. Their offers may look authentic and may sound authentic, and you may want to hitch your wagon to their wonderful offer. On today's show, you'll find out what our experts have to say and why their advice matters to you. You may remember the Nigerian scams or the phone calls warning you that the IRS will be issuing a warrant for your arrest unless you paid an old bill. Today we're going to meet Jim, who lost $67,000 to a con man. But first, let's talk about Larry Carmen, who sold a bottle just like this one, filled with water for $3,500 to hundreds of people. Why would anybody pay $3,500 for this bottle of water? Stay tuned and you'll find out. Welcome back to What's the Matter? John David, a district attorney, thank you so much for coming today. It's good to see you. And we have with us Detective Ron Beasley, and we have Detective James Geiger. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. As you know, the subject today is all about scams, people getting ripped off. My sense is that there are more people being ripped off today than probably ever in the history of this country. Am I right?
I would agree that this is a growing problem. And part of that is that these scams are frequently targeted against the elderly. And we know demographically in this country that 10,000 baby boomers a day are reaching retirement age. And so scammers are aware of that. And this is becoming an increasing problem in almost every jurisdiction.
Now, you worked as a district attorney in Florida. Now here you are in North Carolina. So you probably have seen the same patterns of fraud in both markets. Is that true?
I could say that. I've worked in Miami and then I've worked here on the Carolina coast, and I will tell you, whether it's in the big city or the small town, it's like pouring old wine to new bottles. The names change, but the dynamics are always the same. We frequently see people violating the position of trust, like a family friend, like a trusted advisor, like a close associate of the victim. And now we're seeing increasingly more multinational scams, people using the power of the internet and the telephone to perpetrate their crimes.
So how hard is it to get justice when the perpetrators in Nigeria are outside your jurisdiction and yet you're trying to try a case? It has to be extremely... Well, first of all, can you extradite anybody if the crime was for $10,000 or $100,000?
In practical terms, it's very difficult to enforce these crimes, to investigate them. It's very hard to zero down when it's a multinational incident and figure out who's responsible. And then when we do catch them, there are extradition concerns. Both with problems with dealing with other countries and then the expense of bringing them back. So my theme has always been, in talking to folks, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Detective Beasley, give me a day in your life as a fraud detective.
It's very busy. In addition to the cases I get from our patrol deputies that respond to calls for service, I also get cases from Adult Protective Services where someone has reported, as Mr. David was talking about, the financial exploitation of an elderly person. I get phone calls from other departments. I have to call other departments frequently. The victim may be in one jurisdiction, the suspect may be in the other. I get calls from as far away as departments in Southern California. And it's just, cases come in from various sources. It's a very busy, there's no shortage of stuff to do.
How many cases do you have right now that you work on?
Somewhere between 30 and 40. Those are cases that's solely from our patrol deputies. If I include in Adult Protective Services and other departments, it's probably somewhere between 40 and 50 at the current, as we sit today.
And your caseload is similar?
Same here, 60 or so cases.
So I'm assuming that a case has to hit a certain bar before you're able to dedicate a lot of time, either for an investigation, from an investigation standpoint or a prosecution standpoint. If someone is defrauded out of $5,000, is that a case that would be investigated and prosecuted, or is that just not within the realm of possibility because of shortage of man hours and prosecutorial time? I mean, what is that a problem? The amount of the fraud.
Well, the sheriff's office investigates from $25 to $100,000 plus dollars.
Because to a lot of people,
yes,
$25 is a lot of money.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the same with our office. All the cases are treated the same as far as an investigation goes, as far as prosecution goes. I think there is some leeway there.
Now, does it frequently happen that a relative steals money from another relative and then they don't want to prosecute?
Yes,
I mean, it's got to be hard to prosecute your son.
Yeah, it is. You know, a lot of times these scamming cases center on a violation of a position of trust, and it's frequently an older person in the sunset years of their life who is needing to call upon family members to care for them.
Yeah.
And folks will have access to their home, their car, their bank accounts, their electronic devices as a means to provide support, and then they bend that towards their own selfish interest. And we frequently see that these cases are underreported. Sometimes the victim is not alive at the time of the prosecution, but more often it's the case that when family members get involved, they have conflicting loyalties because they know both the perpetrator and the victim. And so, again, you can't pick your relatives, but you can pick who it is that's caring for you in your sunset years.
You know, my experience has been that prosecuting senior fraud is always problematic because seniors may have some level of dementia or Alzheimer's, compromised to some extent. They pass away before prosecution. Sure. I mean, it really is fraught with lots of landmines, isn't it?
It is. You know, to arrest, we need probable cause to arrest, but in a courtroom, we need proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right.
And there's something called the Confrontation Clause under our Constitution that requires that the victim appear in court if required to do so. And as a practical matter, either because of a mental infirmity or because of unavailability because of death or sickness, our ability to bring justice to these cases is very difficult.
Over and over and over again, I want to emphasize, it seems to me the answer is don't let the crime happen in the first place, isn't it? It's all about education.
That is correct.
It's education, and it's an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. You know, when I talk to senior groups, I emphasize the importance of, you know, monitoring who has access to your bank account, your electronic devices, watch what's going in and out of your mailbox, keep your passwords in a secret location, don't give out your social security number. Just common sense things that are going to make it what we call target hardening, where it's going to be more difficult for scammers, either those close to you or those from abroad, from getting your money.
That's a great term, target hardening. I want to show the three of you an interview that I did with a con artist that had just been released from the state penitentiary in Oregon. And Larry sold a bottle of water for $3,500. I want to show this clip to you, and then I want to talk about it for just a few minutes. Let's roll tape. When did Larry Carmen become a crook?
How did Larry Carmen become a gangster or a crook, or however title you want to phrase it? We started recognizing the color of money and started love it to get the money. The challenge of selling, you get into the door and selling them, starting on a job at $200 and escalating it to maybe $10,000. Looking for something else, creating a need. If you can't find a need, create one.
How do you create a need if it doesn't exist?
Well, you sell the idea. You tell them, I'll give you an example. You've got a roof on a house and it's kind of getting bad. You know, if you go upstairs, Mrs. Jones, and you spray this roof with this chemical, now this chemical is very expensive, they put it on, but it's something new on the market. You spray it up in the attic upstairs. What it'll do, it'll kill any of the dry rot that's in the roofing, because roofing's made from petroleum, and it will stop it. It won't cure it or heal it, give you a new roof, but it'll stop it from decaying, is what it'll do. And so, but like I said, the chemical is very expensive to do this here, but it'll save you, if you had to tear off your roof, you're looking at $8,000. So you might be able to get 5 more years out of your roof.
So how much would you charge to?
$3,600. We use $100 worth of product.
$3,500 to $3,600 for $100 worth of product, which actually didn't do anything.
Didn't do nothing.
What'd
Made it look good.
What'd you spray?
Mostly, we take and mix some chemical in it, water, and whatever we can get a hold of.
Are you as amazed as I am that anybody would fall for it, or does this seem like the kind of thing that you hear about all the time.
Unfortunately, it's not that uncommon. Scams like that.
Now, I can see if I'm a senior, I'm on a fixed income, my roof is in a bad state of disrepair, it's going to cost me $20,000 to replace it, and somebody comes to my door and they have this secret solution and they're going to guarantee a 10 to 20 year life on my roof. $3,500 versus 10 to 20,000, that's a pretty good deal. So isn't there an element here that we all need to recognize? If it sounds too good to be true.
Right.
It probably,
It probably is. You know, one of the common threads that I've seen, Chuck, that scammers rely upon is they create this false sense of urgency. You got something good in front of you, you need to act quickly, or something bad's getting ready to happen to you or a family member, so give us your money quickly. When you're in a situation like that, it's important to pump the brakes. Slow things down and ask yourself the question critically, if I'm being sold a product I've never heard of, do you have any literature that supports these claims? Do you have any references of other customers you might have had? That empowers people to be able to shift it back onto the person selling this item and say, prove to me that you are who you say you are. And if it's so good of a product, it can certainly wait till the next day.
You know, that has been my experience as well, John. So many times victims jump at something because they're told if you don't act today, hey, we've got 5 other people ready to take this offer, you're going to miss out.
Right.
And then a lot of things start to happen. They're afraid they're going to miss a great opportunity. And so they jump in without vetting, without talking to their lawyer, without talking to you guys who know what you're talking about, and then they become victims.
Yeah.
So that's really great advice. Thank you. All right, we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about a victim who gave $67,000 to somebody on the other end of a phone line based on something happening to his computer. And we're going to hear from Jim Porter, the victim, and we're going to talk to you guys about how that case was handled. And my understanding is a really unusual thing happened, John. He got some of his money back. And we all know that that almost never happens. So good police work. We'll be right back. Welcome back to What's the Matter? We have with us a victim of a scam. Jim Porter fell victim and lost tens of thousands of dollars to a con man over the telephone. Can you tell us what happened to you? First of all, give us your background, Jim.
I'm a sales and marketing guy specializing in international business, export, military resale, wholesale clubs. I'm just an old peddler.
And what happened to
One day I was working on my computer and I got a pop-up that some illegal porn was on there and that my computer was disabled and I needed to call the Microsoft help desk with an 800 number, which I did. When I saw Microsoft, I thought, well, everything's good.
Sure.
And they were very professional. First thing the guy did is he gave me his security number. They were very, very good. And so I succumbed to their wishes. They were able to get into my computer. They obviously wanted money, which I sent them, which enabled them to get into my bank account. And there were a couple of transactions that went back and forth. And basically what they had been able to do is get into my equity line of credit, deposit money into my checking account and say, oh my God, we sent you too much money, send it back, which I did.
But now the money they sent you, that wasn't real, but the money you sent them was.
Correct.
And so they went with your money, and the money that you thought you had, you didn't have.
That is correct.
So you called the fraud detective, Detective Beasley. What happened next?
Well, he got right on the case. He was knowledgeable in the subject of scams. He was very familiar with what is called the Microsoft scam. He tracked down using the bank all of the leads, where the money went, and he has a warrant, an international warrant out for the money launderer.
What a harrowing experience you had. Now, is you lost $67,000, recovered part of that from the bank.
Correct.
So they acknowledge some level of culpability, but you're still out, how much?
Probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $40,000.
How easy do you think this could happen to somebody else?
Oh, very easy. What I have done, and thank you so much for what you're doing, I have put out emails to everybody that I know.
You know, a lot of people don't realize that fraud can cause heart attacks, physical ailments. They don't realize the amount of stress involved in somebody defrauding them. How stressful has this been for you?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. And again, you know, I don't have that kind of money just sitting around. I work on a fixed income. So it's been a traumatic experience.
And there's no way you can get that $40,000. Detective Beasley, let me ask you this. Is there any chance for restitution, or is Jim out the money?
Unfortunately, my investigation revealed that when Mr. Porter sent the money where the suspect told him to send it, it went to a bank account in South Florida. Almost immediately after being received at that bank account in South Florida, it was transferred overseas. So it is virtually almost impossible that we will recover that money from another country. As Mr. Porter alluded to earlier, there is a warrant for arrest currently for the person in that bank account in Florida. And I would like to add that when we got the information back regarding that account, there were several other deposits from all over the country into the same account also going overseas. So Mr. Porter was not the only person who sent money to that account.
That's quite a scheme, probably resulting in millions of dollars going offshore and many, many victims like Jim.
Yes. In fact, I remember one of the deposits into that account in South Florida actually came from Australia.
Now, Detective Geiger, you work in financial crimes.
Yes, sir.
This is right up your alley.
Right. We see the same thing every day, almost, in Brunswick County.
What could Jim have done to avoid this?
A lot of times the victims have an idea in their head that something's just not right. So if they just step back, take a breath, maybe call the local sheriff's office. If it's in Brunswick County, call Brunswick County Sheriff's Office. New Hanover, call New Hanover County Sheriff's Office, and just ask the question before you send money or do something that you think that might be, suspicious.
Detective Beasley, what would you say?
I would say you have to keep in mind that these people, like the people who scam Mr. Porter, they do this all day, every day. They're very good. They're very convincing. If you have any doubts, for example, if somebody calls you and says, I'm from the New Hanover County Sheriff's Office and you missed a court date and you owe us some money, there's nothing wrong with looking up the number for the New Hanover County Sheriff's Office and calling that number and saying, hey, is this legitimate? If you think that someone from Microsoft has sent you a pop-up and they're asking for money, there's nothing wrong with calling somebody at Microsoft, looking up that number yourself and calling them.
Is there anywhere to go, or is Jim just out the money?
Usually the bank, reimburses to a point the victims if they can see a crime has occurred. And a lot of times the victims out the money unless there's restitution from an arrest.
Well, I think with banks it depends on the circumstances. For example, I know that if through no fault of my own somebody is able to hack into my credit card account and siphon off $10,000, and in checking my credit card statement I realize that and I go to the bank, I think they pay restitution for that. But I think if I'm called and I take an active part in it, like I give them my credit card number and they won't pay me any restitution. It just varies from bank to bank.
Okay.
I'm glad Mr. Porter at least got some of his money back.
Of course. So basically what they're saying is there's contributory negligence, and so we're going to give you a partial reimbursement.
That's correct. What I wanted to say is I learned, if it's correct, that Microsoft does not have a telephone number. So therefore, if you get something that says Microsoft telephone number, don't call it.
Any other advice to our viewers, Jim?
just like the detectives say, don't be taken like I was.
Well, I'm so sorry that it happened to you. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us today on What's the Matter? What's the matter? We need to stop these scams from being perpetrated. That's what's the matter. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. It's clear that con artists are lurking everywhere, poised to take everything they can from vulnerable victims. Today we learned that victims almost never get their money back. The only surefire way to not lose your money is to not get scammed in the first place. While the old saying, if it's too good to be true, it probably is, still applies, it's much easier to be scammed today than in days of old. Even if you figure out you've been defrauded, it may be hard to figure out exactly how and when you were scammed. Be a smart consumer and don't give the con artist the opportunity to brag about one more victim. Safeguard your personal data and think long and hard before you give anyone personal information, such as your birthday, social security number, bank account, or credit card numbers. Passwords. Don't give anyone your password. Unfortunately, many scams are committed by friends and family members. Always get expert opinions before investing your money or signing contracts. Vet the person or company making the offer. Do background checks and verify any data that's presented. That's it for this show. I'm Chuck Whitlock. We'll see you next week for another exciting show about what matters to you. See you then.